Good evening. When you're ready, you can get into bed. Hopefully, you've done all the things, brushed your teeth, washed your face, put on your special moisturizer, and your favorite PJs. And now you're getting into bed and ready to let go of the day. And tonight, we're gonna, as we fall asleep, also get on the woo-woo train for tonight's episode, because I'm gonna be sharing some of my journey of spending 7 years in Hawaii at a school for intuitive development. And I kind of get shy sharing these stories. It feels like a lifetime ago. But I really appreciated my time in Hawaii, living in such a beautiful place. And for those of you who support this podcast by being a premium member and keeping it ads-free, thank you so much. And I'll do a special meditation for you at the end using some of these intuitive tools. And don't worry, every month for everyone, me and my friend Cody Edner teach a free class on intuition. So, let's start to let the day go as we listen to some of these stories. And I promise you, they are all true. And I'll do my best to remember them as accurately as possible. So you can just let your body start to relax into your bed. Here you are. And there I was. We'll begin this journey in India. I was studying all the great traditions, Hinduism and Buddhism and Vedanta and Zen. I was maybe 24, 23 years old. Had my head shaved, living in the ashram for a while. And one day, my friend came to me and said, "Hey, you should get one of these intuitive reading, healing sessions from a friend of mine," or I think it was his partner, actually, at the time. And I said, "I don't know what that means." And he said, "Don't worry, just try it." And in India, in Rishikesh, there's a lot of these cafes on the Ganges where you sit on cushions on the ground. And there's people from all over the world. And it's very casual. And so he brought this woman over and she sat down with me and she closed her eyes. And she just started to say what she saw inside of me. And I'll never forget this very one specific moment where my chest was just so itchy. And I was sitting there cross-legged, and for some reason, I thought, I'm not allowed to move. It might mess her up, so I can't scratch my chest. So I sat there like a statue with a burning chest. And at that moment, and her eyes were closed and mine were open, she said, "It looks like your chest, there's an itch on your chest." And I was so surprised that she could see that, but then I immediately scratched it. And throughout the session, all I could say is this woman was able to see inside of me and see my feelings and my perspectives, see my struggles and my journey. And after having a degree in philosophy and studying all these traditions and being a bit of an arrogant 20-something-year-old, I was really surprised and asked her how she did that. I needed to know whatever that magic was. And at this point in the journey, it's okay if you believe my story or not. I'm just telling you historically what happened to me. And so I said to her, maybe some weeks later, I can't remember, that I wanted to learn how to do that. And so she told me she learned at this little tiny school in Hawaii. And so I said, all right, I am going. And I made plans and I bought a plane ticket and I moved to Hawaii. And I didn't know I would be there for so long, for 7 years. I was young and exploring and just really passionate about spirituality and awakening. And I suppose, luckily for me, there was no social media, and maybe there was Facebook, I can't remember, but there was no Instagram or anything like that. And so the world wasn't saturated with all of this spiritual content. And there was no podcasting. Not sure if YouTube was really a thing yet. And so you had to go to a place to learn a thing. I don't know if you remember what that was like, to go to a place to learn a thing. And so I made my journey to Hawaii. And there were some really interesting things that happened in between, but we'll fast forward for tonight to Hawaii. I can't remember, but it was in the hundreds of dollars in my bank account. And I was used to living in cheap India, and I arrived in Hawaii without a place to stay or even a ride from the airport. And I hitchhiked my way to a hostel and eventually just made my way. And over the years, I studied at this school, doing all the woo-woo energy reading and healing, and many hours of meditating. And I learned a lot. Most of my teachers were women, whereas in India they were all men. And I got much more of an energetic perspective on growth, on healing, on working through emotions, on seeing with the mind's eye rather than intellectualizing. And maybe this sounds odd to you, maybe not, but part of the practice was I would sit across from people with my eyes closed and I would read their energy. And it's not maybe what you think in terms of pop culture where someone tells you the future. It's much more about validating a human being where they are right now on their journey and perhaps helping them have a realization or take a step. And so I did this many thousands, probably, of times over the years. And to make my way through that school, I worked on a farm. Anyone who worked with me will tell you I'm not a good farmer. I worked as a tour guide, as a kayak guide, a volcano guide. And so very early on, I became a guide. And so for years, even before I became a meditation teacher, I was already a guide. And after a certain point in my training, I started teaching. And because I was so passionate, I eventually became the director of the school. And after 7 years of studying, learning, sitting in a really crappy green plastic chair, that's all we had, I eventually moved back to the mainland of the United States and started teaching online. And before I go any further, you can just check in with your body. You can check in with your breath. And I want to be clear that I do not understand the nature of the universe or the mechanism of how some of this stuff works. Over time, I have been humbled by the mystery and complexity of life. And one of the things that meditation has taught me is how valuable direct experience is. And so this has been my direct experience. And so throughout that time in Hawaii, I got to sit across from so many people. And it's kind of like when I studied philosophy in college and I read book after book about all of these different philosophers and their views on the world. This time around, I was reading people, young people, old people, heartbroken people, creative people, people who had been through enormous suffering, and people who had a generally easier time with life. And so I went from reading books to reading people. And in the intuitive arts, in doing that, and the main reason we do that is because we strengthen that muscle in the mind's eye. Even as I say that, you might notice your own mind's eye. The place that you see your thoughts from. And as we strengthen this mind's eye, we have more and more of a capacity and ability to look inwards. So when those physical eyes are closed, we can start to see with our inner eye. And you see with your inner eye when you dream. When you visualize. And even when you ask a question, perhaps in meditation, and an image arises. Make sure you're breathing nice and deeply. And we all have intuitive abilities. We have the ability to feel and to see. We have the ability to know. Perhaps as you fall asleep tonight, as you allow yourself to rest, you can kind of drop a little intention into your subconscious that you're interested in allowing some of those abilities to rise to the surface when they're needed. As you fall asleep, perhaps you have that knowingness that there is an invisible world, a non-physical world, And just like when you access your dreams in sleep, you can access this world and bring back information. Slow, deep breaths. As you fall asleep, you can settle into your mind's eye, and perhaps you'll take a journey into the dream time.